Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, as the case might be. It's afternoon where I am, and I want to welcome you to our third installment of Evans Kamuru Live, where we share ideas that help you to be, do, and have all it is that you can be, do, and have. So, on the very first installment, we talked about the power of beginnings. Like nothing can be, nothing can start until it's started. It's important to begin. And we shared some other cool ideas as well. I think it's worth checking out. In the second installment, which was last week, we talked about your greatest superpower. And we said that that is not time, even though we say time is money. It's not talent. It's not treasure. It's not even your faith. But I made the argument that your greatest superpower and my greatest superpower is awareness. Because you cannot apprehend that of which you are not aware. For example, if time was a superpower in and of itself, then all of us would be equally productive because nobody gets one extra hour than the other. We all get 24 hours. However, some people are able to take the same 24 hours and manifest so much more or get so much more returns than others. So time in itself is not the resource, it's the awareness of its importance as a resource, and just as importantly, awareness of how to use it that determines what you can apprehend or what you can get out of time. And so it begs the question, if awareness is our greatest resource, of what should we be aware, or to what should we direct our awareness and our consciousness? In my own observation and perspective, I feel that there are four major areas in which, if you and I grow our awareness, they make for a life that's more fulfilling and that's more purposeful. And over the next 4 weeks, we will talk about one of those four areas. Let me give them to you, all of them, so you know what they are and you know what to expect. The first is your awareness of the divine, the awareness of God. The second one is your awareness of your self-concept. You could say self-awareness. The third is awareness of others and how to connect and relate with others. And the fourth is growing your awareness of the world that you live in, the environment of your world, your life experience within the world, as well as your expression within the world. I feel like if you grow your awareness in those four areas, your life will be more meaningful, will be more purposeful. And so today, let's dive into today's subject, growing in awareness of the divine. Now, the subject of the divine can be a little bit controversial, right? I mean, when we think of the divine as God, for example. Some of us say it's God. And so there's that whole controversy of, is there something divine? And if there's that something divine, what is it, right? And even in circles where we all agree on the divine and we agree on what it is, there's the added problem of each one of us having our own perspective of what that divine is. Each one of us brings our own interpretation of what the divine is. However, I choose to start here because the subject of the divine is the only logical starting point. It's the genesis, if you will, that gives context to everything else. Hopefully, even if you may not subscribe to the idea of a God, I'm hoping that maybe you would at least agree or entertain the idea that there is something that is bigger than us. There is something or someone that started it all. And we know that it's not you and me, because we were started by our parents. So then are our parents the source? But they were started by their parents. And well, who was the very first man and woman that started the human race? And then you still are faced with the question, and where did they come from? Who started them? Who started the universe? Who started the world as we know it? Okay, fine, you might say it was a big bang, but who caused the big bang? Who or what caused the big bang to happen? There is the first causative that was not caused, right? If you believe in evolution, what power or what entity or which person started it or oversaw evolution? There is something or someone, an entity that is higher, that not only started it all, but that sustains it all and directs it all. Like, if you look at the universe is not chaotic. There's a rhyme and a rhythm. There's a reason why we have 24 hours in a day, every day, from the beginning of time to the end of time. There's a reason why the earth still tilts and rotates on its axis and at the same speed. There's a reason why the earth orbits around the sun. Like, there's a rhyme and rhythm. There's a reason why your heart beats even when you're asleep. You and I know that it's not our conscious effort that causes that to happen. What caused everything to exist or started it all, and what sustains it all, causes it to continue being, holds it together, right? What's the gravity? The same way gravity holds, things so that they don't fly off the earth, and the gravity of the sun holds the earth in place. That's how the earth is able to orbit around the sun. What's the gravity, if you will, that holds everything together so that it doesn't disintegrate into smithereens? What's that holds it together? And then what's that directs it? I mean, I choose to believe that there is a meaning to all this. All this is happening for a reason. It's going somewhere. Who's that thing or entity that causes, that gives purpose, that gives meaning? And again, I know it's not you and it's not me. No offense here, but on the day you were born, the sun rose and the earth was spinning on its axis. And the day before you came to be, the earth was still spinning on its axis. And no offense, if you and I were to drop dead right now, the world will not stop turning. So obviously it's not you and it's not me. Well, even when we agree on the idea of the divine, we all bring in, or we all come in with different ideas of what that is. If you approach it from a scientific perspective, science is concerned with the physical world, with the material world, with things that can be verified physically, chemically, biologically, things that can be measured and accounted for. And so science thinks that thing that is in charge of everything is just energy. Because science says that when you reduce anything to its smallest particle, whether that's your body or a blade of grass or a concrete slab of pavement, the very least of everything is a particle of energy. Then science says that energy is the first thing that is, and that was not created, because according to the law of conservation, it says energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes form. And so when a scientist is looking at your body, they say your least common denominator is energy. When they're looking at a bird, they say that's just energy in a different form. Now, when you go to the world of philosophy, then we stop calling this supreme thing a thing, and we all of a sudden start giving it a personality, because philosophy talks about infinite intelligence. or universal intelligence or universal consciousness. That it's not just a thing, it's actually a personality that has consciousness, that has, if that makes sense, right? Philosophy talks about universal intelligence. Now, when you go to spirituality, then we start talking about a spirit being. You'll hear people talking about spirit says this, or spirit led me to do this. I come from a Christian persuasion, and so I'll say it's God, right? And even then, we disagree on what this God is. Is it the God of the Christians? Is it the God of the Hindus? Is it the God of the Muslims? Which God is it? And then if that's not enough, comes in also the controversy of, even for those of us who believe in a God, and even let's assume that those of us that are Christians, we each bring our own perception of what we think God is. And it's largely shaped by our background as well as our experiences. So, for example, if you grew up in a family that was loving, now in the Christian faith, we believe of God as the Father. But if you had a father that was absent or that was abusive, can you hopefully appreciate how that would skew your idea of God as a father? All of a sudden, God is not this person that you feel comfortable with. On the other hand, if you grew in a loving home where the authority figures in your life reflected this authoritative figure called God in a positive way, chances are you might have a softer heart and endearment towards God. Some of it is because of experience. Can you imagine? And all of us have gone through pain and trauma, and it becomes very, very, very hard to reconcile the idea of a good God, but that still allows pain and trauma. So, can you see how our own backgrounds, our own experiences, and so on can basically shape the view that you and I have about God? And at the end of the day, we end up creating a God in our own image, as opposed to being beings that are created in His image. We try to basically put God in the context of our own boxes of perception and conditioning, if you will. But I want to suggest to you that there is actually an absolute truth about the divine. Now, when it comes to issues of spirituality and God and morality, we like to say that it's relative, that it's subject to everybody's interpretation, that your truth is truth and my truth is truth. But have you ever found it interesting that when it comes to spirituality and morality, we say it's all relative, but when it comes to the physical laws that direct the universe, we insist there has to be absolute truth. In other words, there cannot be a gravity that is subject to your interpretation and that works the way you think it should work, and a gravity that works differently for me. Gravity is gravity, and so it's up to us to figure out that absolute physical law or truth and align to it. And is it not funny how your ignorance to the law, so for example, if you're ignorant to gravity, it will not stop you from falling. That's why when you see a little baby climbing stairs, you go to support them, because their ignorance of gravity will not stop gravity from causing them to fall if they were to fall back and stumble. The same is true about civil law. The law is the law, and it's not subject to your interpretation. If you're driving on the freeway and the speed limit is 60 miles an hour, that's not subject. Okay, now where I come from here, we think that you can do 5 above or 10 above and not be pulled over. But the law is absolute. You and I don't get to bring in our own interpretation or our own truth of what civil law is. And your ignorance to civil law does not make you, does not basically make you absolve you of guilt when you violate it and of the consequences that come with it. And I want to suggest to you that when it comes to spirituality and the question of the divine, and if there is a divine, and what's that divine, could it be that there's also an absolute truth, and it's up to us to do our due diligence, because we've been given capacity to find out about truth and verify. And so it's incumbent upon us to find out what that truth is and align ourselves to it. And so I want to embark on this journey then today of maybe sharing with you from my own experience, from the things that I've learned, the ideas about the divine and how it is that we can become aware of the divine and connect with the divine. And hopefully there's some things you will resonate with. Harvest those, glean those. There's some things you may not agree with. That's okay. You see, I came to learn that there's truth in everything and there's truth in everyone. And sometimes it's just our willingness to be open-minded to capture that which is true and that which you say, okay, I agree with this. And then for that which you don't agree with, just say, that's okay, let it go, right? So I want to first of all maybe share with you attributes of the divine who I will choose to call God that make him God. Things that are exclusive to God that make him God and that are absent in anything and anyone else. The things that are, because we established earlier on, you and I are not that divine, we're not that supreme, we're not God. What is it that's lacking in us but is present in God that makes him God and that separates him from you and from you and me and him? So the first thing that makes God God is that God is transcendent. God is separate from anything else. He is in a class of his own. You cannot compare him with anyone that is created or with anything else that is created. He is the sole creator. Everything else that is created cannot be put on the same level playing field with him. God is eternal. That means that God has no beginning and has no end. He always has been. He is the one that begins things yet is without a beginning. He's the starter that himself does not have a start. He is eternal. He is self-existent. What does that mean? His existence is not dependent on something outside of himself. Your existence and mine is dependent on something outside of ourselves. Hey, try blocking your airflow and your supply of oxygen for 2 seconds. Then you will understand that your existence is predicated on something outside of yourself being made available. God, on the other hand, needs nothing and no one outside of himself to sustain him. He's self-existent. Another quality that makes God God and you and me not is that God is immutable. That means that he cannot change. He is the constant in a constantly changing world. Now, it's important for God to be unchangeable because if you and I are able to basically rely on laws that don't change, right? Like there is a God who causes gravity to be gravity. And if we could not count on that God to be consistent, then we couldn't even be able to rest, if you will, or subscribe or have faith in any laws and in the reliability of there being any absolute truth. God is immutable. Then there are other qualities like maybe you've heard God is omnipresent. God is evenly present everywhere all the time. You and I can only be in one place physically, and we can only be in one place in terms of time chronologically. God is equally where I am as he is equally where you are physically, and he's equally in this moment, 12:19 p.m. Central Time American. He is in Genesis 1 in the beginning, and as he is in Revelations when at the end of time and outside of time. God is omnipresent. God is omnipotent. He is all powerful. There is nothing that he cannot do. He has all power. That's what allows him to sustain, to not just create the world and everything and everyone in it, but by his power, he's able to sustain it and he's able to direct it to his own ends. God is omniscient. He knows it all. Like God never has an aha moment. He never has a light bulb moment. He never like okay. Now I know we credit science a lot, but sometimes science will tell you one thing, then a few years down the road, research comes up revealing that what they told you 5 years ago was not fully true, and they come back and they say, after further research, we now realize that the earth is round. There was a time that scientists of the day thought the earth was flat. Because science is ever getting to understand the truth that God has already set in place. God never has an aha moment. He knows everything about everything all the time. When you and I watch a movie, we watch a movie in scenes, right? And in frames. God sees everything, the entirety of the frame, as one singular frame. God is all-knowing. He's all-present. He's all-powerful. Now, I could go into many other attributes of God, such as the virtue of God. God is omnivirtuous. I don't know if there's a term like that out there, but it's one I coined, that he is the epitome and the embodiment of anything good. Any virtue, love, beauty, peace, bliss. God is the embodiment and the epitome of that. So, like when you think of love, God does not have love. God is love. He is the source of love. Love comes from him. He's the source of it all. He's the embodiment of it all. Now, I could go into many other qualities of God, like the wisdom of God, but the goal of today was not so much to get into a lot of theological or maybe head knowledge about God, but to talk to you about knowing God, not just intellectually, but knowing God experientially. Because there are many theologians who could expound on some of the things I said in ways that, I got nothing on them. They can expound the Bible in ways that I cannot. There are people who are maybe spiritual leaders or pastors who understand these things, but just because you know God does not mean you know about God, does not necessarily mean that you know God. Right? But if you'd be interested, by the way, in just learning more about God, like in some of the things I shared, get a good book on theology, systematic theology, and particularly the theology of God. You can get some good books that have been written, such as A.W. Tozer's book, The Knowledge of the Holy, or A Case for God by Lee Strobel. There are many good resources out there on the subject of the theology of God. But today, I want to spend maybe the balance of my time talking about the subtitle of today's message, which is Discover How to Become Present to the Presence of God. How do you move from just knowing about this God to actually knowing and experiencing him? And I think this is where it gets exciting. Because when it comes to knowing about God, some people have an advantage over others. Those who have maybe, say, access to the best theology teaching or to the best spiritual teaching and the best spiritual teachers. And it creates a dichotomy. So, for example, sometimes we think of our spiritual leaders, whether they are pastors or bishops or imams or sheikhs or the Dalai Lama, as knowing more about God than we, and so they are closer to God, right? And that could be true as far as knowing about God. But when it comes to knowing God experientially, the playing field is level. Number one, and this will become apparent here in a second. Number one, each one of us that is a human being created, I want to say, in the image of God, comes with capacity right from the factory, free and clear, to know God, to relate with God, to connect with God, to be present to God, to see God, to hear God, to feel God, to taste God. Matter of fact, God created us so that we can know him. It's not our idea. It's his idea. He created us so that he could have a relationship with us. If you look at the biblical account, for example, after God created Adam and Eve, scripture says that he would come down in the cool of the day to hang out with them. And when we, humanity, rebelled against God and we sinned, God sent his son to die. But what was Jesus called when he came? He was introduced as Emmanuel, God with us. If you fast forward to the end of the age, in heaven, if you believe in a heaven, it says that God will be with us. He will be our God and we will be his people. We will be with him. So the idea of being with God, of connecting with God, of knowing God was not even yours. It was his. He wants you to know him, and he wants you to, he knows you and he knows everything about you, but he wants you to know him and have an intimate relationship with him. I think that's good news. That you and I don't have to worry if we know God. Actually, scripture says that whoever hungers and thirsts after righteousness will be filled. In other words, whoever wants to know God can know God. But the funny thing is this: God will not impose himself on you. He will leave you and give you blues clues everywhere, all the time. And he promises that if it's in you to want to know him, you can. It's his idea. Not just that, he equipped you with everything you need to know him. Hey, check out this analogy. I like to think of each one of us as a radio, right? If you take any radio, I don't care whether it's a big radio or a small radio that has FM access, in this case, every radio has the capacity to transmit a radio station. FM waves are in the air. FM waves are with us all the time, but that does not mean that you will catch the radio waves. The FM stations that are in the air, you need a radio, right? But having a radio doesn't mean you will get the station. The radio has to have power. And then the radio has to be tuned to the particular station to catch the station or the FM waves that are already present. Such is God. God is everywhere. And you and I are like the radio. We have the capacity. But it's not until we plug ourselves into him and we tune ourselves in to hear him and to see him in a world of competing voices that we find him. And that's the paradox of life, that God is everywhere all the time, but yet he's only found by those who set intention to find him and to seek him. But I think that's the good news, that he wants you to know him. He's given you the capacity to know him, and he's put blues clues all over for you to know him. And if at all you desire to know him, he promises that you can. He says those who hunger and thirst after righteousness shall find it, shall be filled. You know, and he says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto thee. And he says, seek me and you will find me. You seek me with all your heart. Another scripture says, seek me and you will find me, and I will show you great and mighty things that you have not known. Another scripture says, draw near unto me and I will draw near unto you. So God is omnipresent, yet at the same time, I've heard somebody say in a jokingly way, there is also the omnihidence of God, in that God is present everywhere all the time, but is only found, he's almost hiding and only found by those that care to find him. And I want to maybe share in the next few minutes practical ways as to how anyone and everyone that is a human being created in his image can find God, can be present to the presence of God. Whether you hold a theology degree or whether you're a little baby, the playing field is normal. The playing field is even for all of us. And hopefully that will become apparent here in the next few minutes. So, my friend, I initially said that God has already hardwired you to find him. It is said that as human beings, we are tripartite. In other words, we are three in one. What does that mean? That you and I are flesh, we have physicality, body, but then this is not me, right? Is not everything about me, maybe, is a better way to say it. Because even if I was to be in an accident and this got mangled, I would still be me. So this is just the house in which I live in, my physicality. But then the second part of our tripartiteness is our psychology. We have a mind. And our minds is the seat of our intellect. It's our thinker. It's the seat of our emotions, our feeler. And it's the seat of our will, our thinker, feeler. Anyway, I had another word for that, but I forgot. We have a mind. And the mind drives the body, right? It's what we know intellectually, what we feel emotionally, and our will that drives the house that we live in, called our body, that drives our actions. But you and I don't just have a body and a mind, we are spirit. And at the core of you and I, that's really the real you. Your mind is not you, your body is not you. The real you is spirit. When God, from the Christian account, created man, he breathed his life, his breath, his spirit in us. And I think that becomes the cool paradox. And I shared a post the other day about this, that you and I live in two seemingly exclusive parallel realities, but which are true simultaneously. We have a side of us that is divine, spirit, and we have a side of us that is human, our flesh, our body. But where I'm going with this is, I don't know whether you realize that because you're created in God's image, your tripartiteness reflects the Godhead. Because in the Christian persuasion, we believe that God is one, yet exists in three persons: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. But I share these three aspects of you, your physiology, your psychology, and your spirituality, to show you that at each of these levels, God has made it possible. God has equipped you with each of these aspects of your being so that through each one of them, you have a way of connecting with Him. So that even if you are not a spiritual person, you can still find God through your physicality. You can still find God through your psychology. And you can find God, obviously, ultimately, spiritually. Let's start with what I think is the lowest level, and which every one of us has access to: our physicality. Do you realize that your physical body is a radio that can tune into the presence of God? What do you mean, Evans? Your physical body is your portal to the physical world. And God has given you physical senses: eyes, ears, a nose, a tongue, and feeling, sensation, with which you can perceive and connect and relate to your physical world. And God has put evidence of Himself in the physical world for you to sense. God, I shared earlier, one of the things that makes God God and different is that in theological terms, you say God is transcendent. He is above and removed from everything and everyone that He has made. But in theology, we also say that God is equally and simultaneously immanent in everything and everyone He has made. What does that mean? That means that God is present also in everything that He has made. He is the life force that's causing your heart to beat. He is present in you. He is the creator, you are the created. So He is transcendent and sovereign and apart from you, but at the same time, simultaneously, together with you and in you and flowing through you. You, as a human being, are a unique expression of Him. So what I'm trying to say in many words is that you can see God in your physical environment. Like every time you wake up and you see a beautiful sunrise, that's God shouting and screaming out, "Hello, here I am real." The beauty you see in the sunrise, that's God's beauty being manifest in that piece of art that you and I have access to every morning. Now, it doesn't matter if you are a pastor, a preacher, an imam, the Dalai Lama, the Pope, or you. Both of you have equal access. All you gotta do is open your eyes every morning, and when you see that sunset or sunrise, you have access to God through your physical environment, and which in this case you can perceive through your eyes. Every time you hear beautiful sounds, whether it's that of birds singing, or maybe you're out in nature and there's a breeze and the leaves are rustling and the trees are swaying, or it's by a brook and it's the river is flowing and you hear that sound, or maybe it's something man-made like a good symphony, a good sound. What's your favorite music? Every time you hear a sound that is glorious, the gloriness and the beauty and the harmony and that thing that what's harmony? Like, what's harmony, right? What's harmony? That thing that causes your heart to leap when you hear a nice beat or a nice melody line or a nice harmony line. That's God saying, "Hello, here I am." When you eat a good meal, there are two things that make me believe in a God. I know Lee Strobel has a case for God, and he has a series on, and many other apologists who are more educated and smarter than I can make a case for God. I only need two things to make a case for the divine: food and music. They're just too good to have happened. There has to be an intelligent mind that made music be. And is it not interesting that music is such a universal language? Right? And that speaks again to that idea of universal intelligence, universal consciousness. When you taste a good meal. So, one of my favorite actors is Clint Eastwood, hands down. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and many other movies that he's acted. He's just amazing. But there's this movie he's acted in based on a true story, The $1 Million Baby. You've probably seen it, and Hilary Swank stars in it, and it's about this girl who was a boxer. But there is this scene where Clint Eastwood is in a diner, and the lady, the waiter, or there serves him a key lime pie. I think it was a key lime pie or a lemon pie, and he takes one bite of it, and he just sighs and sinks in his chair, and he says, "I can now die and go to heaven." I remember that line for some reason. Every time you eat your favorite food and it gives you an out-of-body, outwardly sensation where you go like, that barbecue was so good. It made me want to slap my mama. Or that ice cream it hit the spot. It ate. That's what my daughter told me nowadays. That's a slang. You say, that thing ate. That savoriness or sweetness or deliciousness in your food is simply God expressing himself to you. Every time you have a sensation that makes you feel good, whether that's a good massage or intimacy between a man and wife, that's goodness. That's God's goodness. That's God's beauty. That's God's abundance. That's God's glory. What I'm trying to say is that God has put his goodness, has put his greatness, and has put his divinity in your physical world. And he has given you senses with which you can perceive his goodness, his greatness, his holiness, or his divinity, and his virtue in your physical world. And he did that with the hope that you will look at a sunset and tell yourself, surely that could not have made itself. And that by seeing the sunset and the majesty of it and the beauty of the physical world and creativity and creation around you, that it will make you ask the question, who or what is behind this? And as you do your due diligence to figure out what it is that puts the wonder in a sunset, and that puts the touch in the fingertip of a baby, and the warmth on their skin when you hold them, and puts the wonder in the smell of a newborn baby. And as you ask yourself that question, that you arrive at God. You connect with God, you find Him. So, my friend, the subtitle of our message today is Being Present to the Presence of God. Question for you: what's in your physical world that you're taking for granted? How is God revealing Himself? Like right in front of me. Let me show you what's right in front of me. Beauty. There's beauty and there is goodness of God all around us in our physical world. But sometimes we are so distracted that we don't see the good. Look for the good in your physical world, and it will lead you to God. Because as you've heard me say in the past, these are the words of Diane van Furstenberg: good is just God with two O's. If you look for the good, constantly look for the good that is always present on your physical body, in your body, around you in the physical world, you will in that way be present to the presence of God as is being manifested in your physical world. The next level, and this one is higher, is your psychological world. The same way God reveals Himself in the physical world, He reveals Himself in the psychological world. And the same way God gave you free and clear right from birth, from the manufacturer, when you came out your mother's womb, you already had physical senses. Granted, you had to develop them and learn how to see and learn how to bring interpretation to what you're seeing and learn how to hear, and right? God also gave you psychological senses with which to connect with the psychological realm. Now, I want to suggest to you that the psychological realm is more real than the physical realm, because the physical realm emanates from the psychological realm. Case in point, this thing, physical realm. But this thing was invented or created twice. First, in the mind of a person who conceived it. Then they manifested it in the physical, but it was conceived in the psychological realm. The person who invented this, they had the idea in their mind. What's that? What's that? What? So I'm trying to say there is a thought world that is above and which influences the physical world. And God is present in that thought world, and He's given you and me what I coined, this is my own term, psychological sensibilities. The same way we have physical senses to connect to our physical world, we have psychological sensibilities with which we connect with the psychological world. Here they are, or here are some of them. Imagination. Imagination is to our thought world, to our mind, the world of mind, what our eyes are to the world of sight, right? To the physical world. Imagination helps you to see things in your mind the same way eyes help you to see things in the physical world. God gave you imagination. God gave you intuition. I like to think of intuition as hearing. The same way you can hear my voice physically, God speaks to us in the thought world through our intuition. That thing that you call a feeling or a hunch that you can't quite explain, that thing you call a revelation or an aha moment, that's your intuition at work when God gives you a download and you hear His voice. Perception. I think of perception as a viewfinder, right? A frame through which you see things. Now, you've heard me say this and you'll hear me, I'll say it again, that in the world there are opposites. God gave us opposites so that we can differentiate one thing from another and appreciate one thing from another. How would you appreciate light if there was no darkness? How would you appreciate good if there was no bad? How would you appreciate God if there was no Satan or the possibility of a Satan? Right? God had to create opposites so that we can differentiate and be able to understand one thing, appreciate and differentiate one thing from another, but also so that you and I could have choice. Because if all there was God, then of what good is there to have free will? But God made sure there is a devil so that you and I could act, so that our free will could actually be exercisable and you could choose. And perspective is the frame, the viewfinder that allows you to focus on good or bad. And whatever it is that you focus on, that is what you get connected to. That's what you attract. That's whatever you focus on, as they say, grows. And God has given you the capacity or the mental abilities, acuity, if you will, of imagination. And He wants you to use your imagination to think good things, to imagine good outcomes. We typically use our imagination to imagine negative outcomes. He wants you to use your intuition to filter out the many voices that speak into your mind and hear His voice that tells you, I love you, that tells you, you got this, that tells you, you got your image, my image in you, you can do this. He wants you to use your perception or your viewfinder to find His goodness that is present, even in the presence of badness, but to see Him through your perspective. God gave you will. Will is focus, so that you can focus on mentally on the goodness that He gives. He gave you the capacity of reason or intellect, so that you could choose to focus on His truth as opposed to falsehoods. And God gave you the mental capacity of memory, so that when your mind is going back to past experiences, you're remembering His goodness. You're not remembering pain and trauma and sadness, or even if you're remembering those things, you're framing them in the context of God's goodness and the context of God's purpose. Now, I know I've glossed over those psychological ideas really, really fast, but you can find out more about those. I talk about them in my book, Created for Love, in the section about loving yourself. And in the section about loving yourself, I talk about loving your body. I talk about loving your mind. And it's in that section that I talk about the mental faculties that we have. But today we're talking about being present to the presence of God, and God is as present in the psychological world as He is in the physical world, and He's given you those mental faculties: imagination, intuition, perception, will, reason, and memory, so that you can see His goodness and His beauty. You can channel your attention psychologically to His goodness and be present to His presence psychologically. And finally, God basically His spirit, and He breathed His own spirit and His own breath in you and I. We are physical as human beings. We have a mind. We have a psychological aspect to ourselves, but at the core, we are spirit. And how do we connect with God in our spirit? So in the physical world, we use our senses. In the psychological world, we use what I call sensibilities. In our spiritual world, and this is one that I'm still thinking through and trying to chew on, I just say you connect with God in the spiritual realm through spiritual sensitivity. But unlike the physical realm and the psychological realm, where it's you basically trying to find God, right, in your physical environment, to see Him, to feel Him, to taste Him, to perceive Him in your physical environment, to channel your psychological environment or your mind to find Him in the psychological world. In the spiritual world, maybe what I've come up with so far is that it's all about just sensitivity to His presence, to His spirit that already is. I subscribe to the idea that at your core, your spirit man or your spirit woman, your spirit being is created in the exact image and likeness of God, and it's perfect and intimate and one with God already. And that all you gotta do is let it be. On the spiritual realm, it's not about effort. It's not about exacting physical effort. It's not about exacting psychological energy, but it's just about relaxing and letting be. It's about letting go and letting God, just resting in the fact that your spirit and His are one. I actually find that in the spiritual realm, it's not so much about you trying, but it's about you resting in the reality of the provision that God has already made that allows you to tap into Him. And like I told you, this is one of those that I'm still trying to chew on, right? I'm finding that when it comes to connecting with God and being present to His presence at the spirit level, it's less about trying and more about trusting. It's less about striving and more about surrender. It's less about doing and more about letting, if even that makes sense at all. But God has already created you in His image. It's His spirit that's inside in you. The Bible says the lamp of a man is the spirit of the man in him. It's the spirit of God. It's already one. And it's just a matter of letting it be. I don't even know how else to explain it. My friend, I think all I'm trying to say is that you don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be the Pope. It's an equal playing field. You don't have to be old. You don't have to be young. You don't have to be white. You don't have to be black. You don't have to be gay. You don't have to be straight. You don't have to be a Democrat. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be tall. You don't have to be short, fat, slender, female, male, rich, poor. Each one of us has senses. And each one of us has a physical world in which God manifests Himself. You too can be present to the presence of God in your physical world. You don't have to be any of the things I said. You too come with psychological faculties with which you can connect with the goodness of God in the thought world. Imagination, you were born with it. That's why as a kid you dreamt. You dreamt of all these things. And then as you grew up, you developed bad habits that stifled that dreaming and imagination. But the fact that you dreamt of a kid and you daydreamed and you imagined yourself in places and doing things is proof positive that you came from your mother's womb straight out of the factory with that faculty, intuition. You came with the ability to perceive and to hear God in your environment and surroundings. Each one of us gets one. And finally, you can perceive and be present to the presence of God in the psychological realm and in the spirit realm. Guess what? Even here, each one gets one. You get one, you get one, you get one, you get one, I get one. I'm kind of feeling like Oprah. Everybody gets one. Look under the chair. And that is the great equalizer. That God wanted each of His children to connect with Him, and He gave each one of us the capacity to, and He put around us and within us in the physical realm, in the psychological realm, and in the spiritual realm, His presence, so that anyone that wants to find Him can. And as a final consideration, my friend, where and when do you find God in your physical world, in your psychological world, and in your spiritual world? Here and now. God is. God is evenly present in every moment of history, in time, and of outside of time. He's evenly present everywhere. You and I try to find God and relegate Him to certain places and certain activities and certain. God is equally present in your prayer closet as He is right where you are right now. God is equally present and accessible to you when you're reading your Bible or in church worshiping as when you are at work doing what He has called you to do in the marketplace. God is present in every moment. God is. God is. He is present to you and available to you right now. Hebrews 11, I think it's verse 5 and 6 says that without faith it's impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that God is, that God exists, not was, is, here and now. And it says that God is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. In other words, the way we express faith is believing that God exists, and we express faith by seeking him, but we seek him with the assurance that we will find him. Somebody once said, be present in the present because it's the only moment in which you can find God. And it's become now my mantra to be present to the present. The present is, now is called the present moment. Could it be because it's a gift? Be present to the gift that's the present. Be gift to the present that's the present, and which is the presence of God. That's it, my friend. And as you grow in awareness of who God really is, the true God, not the God that of our skewed perceptions, and you become present to his goodness, to his greatness, to his divinity, through the ways I've showed you in your physical world, in your psychological world, then you become present to his presence and you become intimate with him. A.W. Tozer, a Christian theologian, amazing Christian theologian, wrote the book, The Knowledge of the Holy, and in it he said, the thing that comes to your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. Because how you connect with God, who is the source and genesis of everything, is what actually shapes the other things we're going to talk about. How you see yourself, self-concept and self-awareness, how you see others, and how you see the world you live in, your experience of life in the world, as well as your expression of purpose in the world. It all starts with a healthy view of God. And you, my friend, have the capacity to develop that view of God. And here's the beautiful thing: God is infinite. So even if you are continually aware of the presence of God every day and every moment of your life, there would still be something new to discover about him in the next one, because he's infinite. It never ends. So I'll stop there, my friend. There are many other things we could say, but we'll stop right there. But like I said, I've written a book, Created for Love, 4 Master Keys to a Life of Purpose and Fulfillment. And in here, my purpose was to give you an awareness of the love that God has for you, and to let you know that God created you so that he could love you. And when you can learn how to receive his love, then you can be a conduit of his love. Because you're created in his image, you too are love. You are a unique expression of his love. Then you can, once you receive his love, you can love him back. You can love yourself in a healthy way. You can love your neighbor as yourself. And you can learn to love your world, to love your life. He said he came to give us abundant life, and to love your purpose. God created you on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose. If you'd like a copy of this book, go to Amazon, Created for Love, Evans Kamuru. I'm the only Evans Kamuru in there with a book, Created for Love. If you'd like a signed copy like this, DM me, and I'll sign one and put it in the mail. One of the things of getting a signed copy is that I can also include this core bookmark that can remind you, even as you read your other books, that you're created for love. I can't do that with Amazon, but if you want me to send you a signed copy, I will throw that in. Follow me on social media. Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on IG, working to get on TikTok and LinkedIn. And I share a lot of content every day. Some of it is written, some of it is in short videos that will inspire you and just bless you. And you can find me, Evans Kamuru, on any of those platforms. The beauty of having a name like Kamuru is that it's not like Bob Jones. I'm the only Evans Kamuru, maybe, or maybe one of a handful. So if you go to those platforms, you will find me and be able to connect with my content. And for what it's worth, like, subscribe, share. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear in the future. I'd love to continue connecting with you. That's it, my friend. Blessings to you. And continue being present to the present that is the present moment and which is the presence of God. Blessings.